Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Product Led Festival. It's great to have you with us again. I have good news and I have bad news. Bad news first. Unfortunately, this is the last session of the Product Led Festival, but the good news is it's going to be really, really good one to remember. I know you're going to have a lot of really good takeaways from this session. So thank you for sticking with us, and I'm sure you're about to get your reward for doing so. Now, just a reminder, you can go to productledalliance.com. There's loads of resources on there, and that's also the way that you can jump off and get into our free Slack community that's got 7,500 members in it, all product-led pros. So come and join us on the Slack. I look forward to seeing you there. Just a reminder before we jump into the session, you can submit your questions through the chat box. If you haven't done so already, it's just on the right-hand side of your screen there. Just type them in as you think of them. You don't need to wait until the end, and then we'll cover as many as we can towards the end of the session. So without any further ado, I will invite our speaker to join me on stage, join me on camera. And while he does, I will give him a very brief introduction. So I'm delighted that today we are joined by Evan Powell, who is a co-founder at Reprise. Now, Evan is going to be talking today about product teams. So Evan, if you wouldn't, yeah, there he is. I knew he was coming. Great to see you, Evan. And so Evan's going to be talking about product teams and how they are the superheroes in today's product-led world. So with no further ado, I'll hand straight over to you, Evan.
Yes, thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here, closing out the day. Really looking forward to the conversation and hope to see some questions and some discussion started as we get going here. So I think the first thing to talk about here is when we say product teams are the superheroes in today's product-led world. Well, superheroes are typically saving somebody, and so who is that? And in my mind, what we're looking for, and the reason that product-led has become so exciting is because the B2B buyer has changed fundamentally, right? So my background is in sales. I started out as sales, and most of my interactions with product teams were begging them for features to make my deals easier. But what I've noticed, as I progressed as a salesperson, was that the B2B buyer has fundamentally changed. And so ultimately, they are calling out for a superhero because so many organizations are still selling like they were 10 to 15 years ago, when buyers were looking for someone to hold their hand and have a consultative engagement and tell me what I don't know because I've never bought SaaS before. So please, wise salesperson, help me out. And the fact is that if your organization is still selling like that is the persona that they're talking to, you're pissing off your buyers. And it's not sharing properly. There we go. And so ultimately, right, you don't want to be doing that. But today's buyer is jaded by that approach, right? They've bought 10 things. They've had a bunch of them not work out. They've been sold the dream before. They've been told that the ROI is going to come from the product, only to find that the actual process of getting that ROI makes them hate getting up in the morning. And so they're looking to buy differently. And you can see this in the statistics, right? 77% of buyers said that their last B2B purchase was too difficult or very complex. And 45% of a buyer's time is spent researching independently. And only 5% of that buyer's time is spent with your sales team. And that is super, super important because it's emblematic of a buyer that says, I want to be enabled early on. I want to understand what I'm buying. I want to conduct as much of this process in my own way. And so it's time for SaaS companies to start enabling buyers to buy based on the way that they want to buy, which is this self-service type model. And by the way, that's not saying get rid of salespeople, but it's saying give buyers the information when they want it. And so we need superheroes to help save the buyers from this horrible situation. And by the way, there's tons of different things that I'm talking about here, right? It's I'm going to fill out a request for a demo on your website, and then I'm going to get interviewed for 30 minutes so that you can help fill out your CRM. And then maybe a week and a half from now, you'll schedule a demo where I can actually figure out what the heck your product does and whether or not it's useful to me. And hopefully at the end of that, it wasn't a giant waste of my time, but maybe it was because it wasn't what I needed. Right? And so what I want to talk about today is how product teams are uniquely positioned to help fix this problem, because ultimately what buyers are looking for are product experiences early and often in their process of deciding what solutions are going to help their business. And so you're probably thinking that I'm talking about a freemium model here. And don't get me wrong, freemium models are fantastic. And it's absolutely something that if it works for you, you should look into. I mean, you're probably not at the Product-Led Alliance if you aren't considering that form of product-led growth of putting a free product on your website. But that's not the only way to capture this kind of buyer sentiment and really help the buying teams at your prospects get what they want from you during the sales process. And the reason for that is not every product works for a freemium model, right? It's not always an option. Sometimes, you're a security company, and guess what? Not everybody's going to install security on their system. Or you're an infrastructure company, and no one's going to spin up a bunch of servers for free necessarily. I know there are examples of people that do. Or a health tech company where you need to be storing sensitive data, or maybe your product needs to be installed in someone's code, or you need 15 users to start out before it makes sense, right? And that might be an indicator that freemium might not be for you, but your buyers still want those product experiences. And by the way, even if you can do freemium with your product, there still can be friction there. Because realistically, you drop someone into an instance and you can do all kinds of great onboarding, but the fact of the matter is, when you drop someone into your product, there is still work that person has to do in order to receive ROI, some sort of work, right? Even if it's minimal, it's some kind of work. And a result can be that you have people bouncing off of your product because they don't understand what's at the end of the tunnel for them. And even when these facts are true, that doesn't give you an excuse for not providing a product-led experience to your buyers because they are demanding it. So let's talk about the sort of supporting motions that you can bring to a product-led movement and how you as product teams can get involved. So we're going to start right at the top, which is putting any product can be more product-led. Your product needs to be built to be sold, right? This is the point at which you're building a product. And I think a lot of times, and this was one of my frustrations in sales, is that I would talk to product teams and they were very, very focused on this concept of the user. And don't get me wrong, the user is incredibly, incredibly important. But a lot of times these product teams will be building product for users at the expense of what it's like to actually experience that product for the very first time when it's being sold to you. And you need to be thinking as a product team of a prospect as one of the core groups that you're building for in addition to the user. So when you're building out a new feature, it's not just what's it going to be like to use this, but what's it going to be like to explain this feature to someone? Is this something that I'm going to want to put up, as a major differentiator for competitors? Is it easy for my salesperson to explain why that's the case? Is it easy for my prospect, without even necessarily accessing the product, to understand why that's important? Is the way in which that feature is used something that is obvious to someone who doesn't know anything about my product today? Because if that's not the case, they're not going to get to the point of actually seeing how awesome that feature is. And so we need to be thinking about products as the most important go-to-market asset your team has. And that if there's one thing that I think we can take away from this, it is that your product is not just the thing that you're selling. It is the most important piece of go-to-market collateral that your sales team has. Because ultimately, companies, they do two things. They make things and they sell things, right? And as product teams, traditionally product teams are involved in the making side of things. As product-led growth becomes more and more prevalent, product teams need to be thinking about themselves as making things and selling things because it's the product that's going to be doing a lot of the sales. And so now let's talk about actually supporting that sales motion. First thing we need to be doing is thinking about how we can enable buyer research. And that means we need to be putting our product where the buyer needs it. Specifically, let's think about the website, right? Within 15 seconds of hitting the website, your buyer needs to understand what you do, but also how you do that, right? And so that's where you need to be thinking about, how can I help my marketing team, my product marketing team, my demand gen team? How can I help them surface the product? What are assets I can give them? Can I give them, whether it's a freemium version, an interactive demo that can be taken right on the website so that immediately they're not doing that awful flow of the discovery call into whatever it is. They're actually experiencing what it's like to use the product. Maybe it's a video, maybe it's whatever it is. And not just in the website, it needs to be going into your email marketing as well. And so this is, again, part of the shifting mindset with product-led growth is product teams thinking of themselves more and more as part of the go-to-market function and collaborating with sales and marketing in getting your product in front of your buyers. Once you've done this, when buyers have the opportunity to experience the product in any way early on in their research, when they raise their hand to talk to salespeople, they actually want to talk to your sales team, right? So many sales engagements right now are wasted time because effectively what salespeople are doing is helping the buyer conduct research. I went to your website. I wanted to know what you did. I sort of got the sense that you might be able to provide ROI, but I don't really get how your product works. So I'm going to book time with a salesperson. I'm going to get my demo, and then I'm never going to talk to them again because I didn't actually want to talk to a person yet. When you can surface that product experience up in the funnel at the point at which the buyer is doing research, then you get to a point where the buyer says, all right, now I want to talk to a salesperson, and I don't want to have a, so what do you do conversation. I want to have a, I saw your product on your website. I went through this flow of how you provide value to me, and I want to talk about how this would work specifically for my organization. Now you're getting more and more qualified meetings coming off of your site. But it doesn't stop there, because once you've gotten someone into a sales funnel with you, they need to have an enjoyable sales experience. And that involves a demo that is something more than just a stock harbor tour with Acme Co., right? Because we've all seen that. Product demos look beautiful when they've been engineered by a product team. They look great, but I need to know that it works for me. And so what I want to see in that demo as a buyer, I want a demo environment that's customized to me. I want it to have my logo. I want it to have data that looks like me, right? I don't want to be sitting there imagining, oh, okay, well, that's a demo for a financial services company, and I'm a health tech company, so maybe my bars would look a little different, and instead of accounting terms, I'd be talking about my practice, and that doesn't cut it anymore. And product teams need to be involved in this, right? We need to be thinking about, on the product side, how are we going to provide that asset to sales? This needs to be part of feature launches. If I'm launching a new feature, how am I making sure that my team is enabled to demo that feature in a customized, bespoke way to each prospect that comes into the funnel? Because buyers need to feel the ROI from your product. And this is really, really important, right? This goes back to buyers being jaded. Because it used to be, when I first got started in sales, I could put up a nice ROI calculator. I could tell them all the time they would save. And people had only bought 1 or 2 pieces of SaaS. And so they'd be like, oh yeah, wow, if I can get those results, I'm in. And that was enough to sell it. Buyers are smarter now, and they want to know that actually getting that ROI is a pleasant experience. And so we need to be able to show that in our product very early on. Because again, right, they've had the experience of buying the thing that had ROI and hated using it. And this isn't just, right, the buyer, the end user themselves. This is something that is now spreading across the organization, right? So we at Reprise just hired a CFO, which I know she's wonderful, but it also means, kind of fun times are over now. Like every time we want to do something, we have to sort of make more of a case than we used to. And I'm incredibly grateful to her for that. But it's really, it's change, it's been enlightening to see the way that she asks questions about a new piece of software, right? Because it's not just, what does this provide for us and how do I know that this gets us ROI? The next question is, are we going to adopt it? Have the users tried it? Do we know for sure that they're going to be able to get what they want out of it? Because just like the buyers and end users themselves, finance teams have had to come back a year later and say, sure, glad we spent tens of thousands of dollars on that thing that nobody ever logged into. And so we need to be able to provide buyers with ammunition and experience that they can go to their finance person and say, no, here's how I would do it. And so that starts with a demo so that they understand it themselves. Because when you're relevant to your buyer, they'll offer you more information on the sales front, right? And again, from a product perspective, it's how are we designing demo environments and experiences that will allow for this, that will allow our salespeople to stop starting every engagement with, let me give you 20 questions, and say instead, hey, I saw those demos you took on our website, and I can see you're interested in these particular features. And so I've got this custom environment for you, and I think you would use our product this way. And then you walk through the features and then say, okay, is that what you were thinking as well? And they're either going to say yes, which is fantastic, right? That's great, you've nailed it. Or they're going to say no, and here's what I would be doing instead. And now you're actually having a conversation with someone who feels like you're trying to provide them with value. But again, all of that is being enabled by a relevant product experience. And then what happens after we've done those demos. We need to enable those buyers to advocate internally, right? It's that CFO situation I was just telling you, but it's compounded by the fact that in a, I want to say post-pandemic world, but here we all are on a virtual event. In a world that is hopefully on its way to being post-pandemic, your sales team is not being invited back into the room with the buying committee. People want to be able to do things on their own. And so what's happening is buying decisions are being made in committee and your company isn't in the room. And so as product teams, we need to be helping our teams create assets and creating product experiences that can put us in the room without being there, right? So that when that buying committee meeting is happening, whoever the end user is, their champion, the person that's going to get this done for you at the organization, they're not just saying, here's a bunch of ROI metrics. They're saying, here is how I would use it. Here is how I'm going to derive that ROI. And actually walking the decision makers through the process of getting what your company can offer them. And if you can do that before your competitors can, you absolutely have a leg up in every engagement. I'm talking ahead of clicking my bullets here. I'm getting so into it, I'm not actually clicking forward. But essentially what we're saying here is enable your buyers to advocate for you, to sell for you, to demo for you. And so the next question is, I forgot my build. How do we do this as product teams? And one of them can be convince your engineers to buy or to build bespoke demos for each of your prospects, or hire a bigger sales engineering team. The fact is that's unlikely to happen, right? You all are looking at building out features. Your engineering team is looking at building out new parts of the product. They don't want to do this. And by the way, budgets aren't expanding to be able to do this, right? So this is, again, you might be sitting here thinking, well, Evan, you're talking about all these things, but they're sales engineering team focused. Sales engineering teams are chronically underfunded, and it's getting worse, right? It used to be that the average ratio of sales engineers to salespeople was like 1 sales engineer to 5. That's getting closer to 1 to 10 now. And so we need the rest of the organization to be picking up the slack in terms of putting things in front of buyers. So again, we get back to how do you do this? And this is the part where I come clean and say, I'm a salesperson. I told you up front that I'm a salesperson. We do this at Reprise. This is the function of our product. And I won't spend too long pitching us in particular. There are, you could go ahead and put out videos and things like that, but we think that the best way to do this is by creating product-focused experiences for your go-to-market team quickly by using a product like ours that allows you to capture the front end of your interface, put it into a kind of what you see is what you get editor, really quickly create an interactive product experience that looks and feels and behaves like the real thing, but is just your front end in an isolated area where it can be used for demos and easily customized, and then put it on your website, use it in your sales demos, put it absolutely everywhere. So I want to take a moment now and turn things over to Q&A. I'm really interested in hearing some of your questions.
Great, thanks very much, Evan. Let's go through to the Q&A then. So if you've got a question that you would like to put, then please do just drop that into the chat and we will get through as many of those as possible. So the first one I can see already come through is from John F. And John says, how can product teams identify compelling early user experiences that will resonate most at different stages in the funnel?
Absolutely. This is a great question. And I think it's one that, it can be tempting to say, well, I've done a lot of user research. I've spoken to a lot of our customers. I know what they use. I can even pull product data from great products like, talk to the Pendos and whatnot of the world. And that tells me what people use. And therefore, that's what I should be, creating for prospects and people to understand. That's not actually the case, right? A lot of times your most powerful, most used features are not what resonates to buyers when they don't already understand what they do. And so, what I typically recommend when I have product teams that are asking me this question is go get your best sales rep, put them in the room with you and ask them, hey, when you're giving a demo, what's the point at which if the prospect nods their heads, I've got them, I've got that deal. Those are the experiences you want to bottle up and put them everywhere you possibly can, right? Because a prospect is different than a buyer, right? And a prospect is different than a user, sorry. A prospect is someone who doesn't know what you do. And so the quality of life features that make some of that they will probably use every day don't necessarily resonate with them the same way as that's the feature where I can see how that's going to change the way I do things today. Those are different things.
Absolutely. No, I think that's really, really insightful. I love the idea of just what is that aha moment to your sales rep, and then how can you bottle it? That sums it up perfectly. The next question here is from Randall Gibson. Thank you, Randall. Could you go into more detail about how technical B2B products can activate better post sign up?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is something that we see a lot in terms of, that concept I was talking about, where just because you have freemium, it doesn't, you put someone in an instance and there's still work that they need to do. One thing that we see being really powerful is help to show them what it's going to look like when they're done. Right. So if you look at a great example of this, I mentioned Pendo earlier as a good way to get metrics, but they've done this really well, where if you go on their website, they have a whole session, a library of demos powered by Reprise, but a whole library of demos where they go in and they give you little vignettes about different features in the product. And you do one of those and it says, hey, do you want to go sign up for our free version now? And what they're effectively doing there is saying, here's the end result of the work you're going to do when you sign up for my freemium. Now, do you want to go and do it? And that is so much more powerful, because you're effectively saying, even if it's a very short tunnel, it's still a tunnel. You want to show them the light at the end of it very early on, so they do that activation quickly.
Yeah, I really like that idea. It's giving them the motivation to go through, even if it's a short funnel, it gives them motivation. Absolutely. Great. So we've got one from Chris. Thank you, Chris. I see how this approach works well for enterprise and B2B. How is it applicable how is this applicable in the consumer/B2C world?
That is an excellent question. I'll preface this by saying I don't have a background in B2C, but all of these forces that are causing the focus on product led now are because the B2B buyers are trying to get the experience that they get in the B2C world in B2B now. And so in the B2C environment, you're looking for the same things. And we actually have some B2C customers. It's the same kind of thing, where they still want to know, right? Okay, I'm going to sign up for a free app, but what am I getting at the end of it? Or I'm going to eventually, put my credit card information into this. Or, I remember when my wife and I were dating and I showed her the Uber app and she's like, I don't know, are they going to steal my credit card? Like, what am I actually going to get out of this? Right. In the very, very early days of Uber. And you think about that experience. If you're a new B2C product, what that person wants to know is, when I do this, what's on the other side for me? Can you show me that early on? That's the kind of approach that we're thinking. And the fact is, right, a lot of times the distance between sign up and activation in B2C can be a lot shorter. And so this kind of approach is helping to bridge that gap for B2B. But that's not always true, right? Because more and more consumers want more complex products as sort of self-service now. And so if you are doing that approach, you need to be thinking about the same kind of things that B2B companies have had to wrestle with in trying to bring that consumer emotion over into the B2B side.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope that helps, Chris. And it's strange to think of a world where people didn't know what Uber was or didn't trust Uber.
Yes, I know.
It wasn't that long ago. All right. Great. Thank you. So the next question then is, my company has a complex product. Will it be this? I think this is linking into that idea. Well, my company has a complex product. Will it be more challenging to support a product-led motion?
Again, I think this depends a lot on how you're defining product-led. And I think one of the things that the product-led movement, it has been incredible to watch over the past few years, the amount of sort of zeal and enthusiasm around product-led. But one of the things that I think has been a risk of that is that there can be sort of an orthodoxy that it is freemium or nothing. And I think that misses the point a little bit, right? Freemium is good and a critical part of product-led. It's incredible. And the more companies that can do it, the better, right? But it's not always, as we were talking about before, for everybody. And so if you have a more complex product, what you need to be thinking about is, what's the right way to surface a product experience to my users? Because that's fundamentally what is driving product-led growth, is this idea that buyers want to know what it's like to use your product as soon as possible. And where freemium is the right tool for that, it's incredible. If you have an incredibly complex product that people will not be able to engage with just by dropping them into an instance, that's where you need to start thinking outside the box because what you want to be showing them are still those aha moments. How can I put those aha moments in front of them? How can I carve off pieces of the product? How can I maybe abridge certain workflows when I show them how it works, so that they're getting to the points where they're seeing, I do this, I do that, and then I get value. Even though this and that might be very complicated things, I can kind of move them through it. And again, show them the light at the end of the tunnel so that they then want to engage in what is a complex product down the line.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. Thanks, Evan. I can see Naval's dropped a LinkedIn profile in there. So yeah, we've got Evan's pinned. Evan's LinkedIn profile is pinned on there as well on the chat. So if you want to connect with Evan, please go ahead and do, and you can follow up that way, I'm sure. Great. If there's any more questions, drop them in. But we are running slightly short on time now, but we can probably get one or two more in. So try and get those in as quickly as possible. The next question then is, here we go. My product changes daily. How does that affect my ability to support a PLG motion? Yeah. So what about product change, rapid product changes?
Yeah, and this is really common. We get this question a lot. I think, it can be tempting to think that when it comes to, engaging top of funnel buyers or users or people early on in their journey with your product, that I'm going to have to continually update that experience every time I push code. And for again, the freemium motion, that may be the case in order to make sure that the product still works. But what you're really trying to do, unless what I want to do is like look at each release and say, okay, that was a change, but was that like a fundamental change? Was that a change that really impacted the way that people do things with my product, or was that an iterative improvement, right? Because in a sort of CI/CD world, you're constantly making iterations and improvements. They're not always dramatic changes to the way that things work. And if it's not that kind of change, you don't need to go through and update all of your assets right away, right? Because you're still able to convey that value. If it is something though, if it's something that says, hey, this thing used to take 10 clicks, now it takes 2, right? Yes, go make those updates. Make sure you're putting that out there everywhere you possibly can. But really assess, the goal of product as a go-to-market asset is to help people understand what you do. So if your change is not fundamentally changing the way in which they do it or what it is that you do, you may not need to make that update right away, and you can kind of batch it together until you've reached something more significant in the future.
Great advice. So I think we have time for one last question, maybe. So this one is, how can product teams free up resources to support these product-led GTM motions? That's a really good question.
Yes. My first answer is self-serving, which is that we can help you with that. But I think there's there are other things here, right? What you want to be doing is looking for ways to put some level of control over how the product is shown more into the hands of your go-to-market teams than it is today, right? And so this is what Reprise does, is basically allows people to do that without needing to do code. But even if it's not that, if you really want to go with a build it yourself, start thinking about ways that you can allow some customization of your demo environment by a non-engineer. Start looking at ways that you can provide more flexible environments or more flexible product experiences that can be put more in control of your go-to-market teams. Whether that is making sure that there's an environment that looks great for video assets, whether that is making sure that you're liaising even more closely with your product marketing team around how they can put those things together. I'm going to say the answer to this is probably Reprise, but there's other things out there too that you can be looking at.
I think that's allowed. You've been very well behaved and not plugging too much. I think you're allowed to do it a bit. That's fine by us. Great. Well, thank you so much, Evan, for that presentation. It's been really, really useful. I'm sure the audience will have taken a lot from it. I'm just going to throw up your last slide there so that everyone can see your contact details as well. Please do reach out to Evan. That's his email address. I'm sure he'll be happy to follow up with you offline as well. All that remains for me to say is thank you very much, Evan, for the presentation and for answering all those questions.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yes, please reach out. I love talking about this stuff. Happy to do it anytime.
Great. Thanks, Evan. And that brings to a close the Product-Led Festival. I can't believe how quickly it's gone, but I'm sure we have hopefully delivered lots of information in a very short period of time. Nice concentrated 2-day hit of everything you need that is product-led, everything you need to go back to your desk and make a real difference to your day to day and deliver some value to your organization, to your business, and of course, to your users. Thank you to all of the speakers, all of the sponsors, all of the partners, and of course, everyone who attended and joined the session, especially if you ask questions. We love questions. Thank you all. We'll look forward to seeing you soon, whether that's on our Slack community. There's 7,500 members on our Slack community. So head to productledalliance.com where you'll be able to jump off into our free Slack workspace. We hope to see you there, or we'll maybe see you at another virtual event and maybe an in-person event. We've got a full roster for 2023, so we hope to see you at one of those as well. We've got lots more resources online, productledalliance.com, courses, and lots of content. So do check that out. And we hope to see you again soon.